rocking with some of the realest coaches in the game. Coach RB and Coach CB. Area code 459.
What up, Area Code 459? It's your boy, Coach B. I'm here with my co-host, Coach CB. What's up, CB?
What's up, Coach? How you doing?
Man, I'm blessed, man. I'm blessed. We got a special guest in the house. But before we get to that guest, let's go ahead and thank some people.
I want to give a shout out to In-House Inc. for the awesome logo that they've created behind us. I want to give a shout out to J May Crafts and her awesome ability to create our shirts and everything else that she does with household items. And just want to give a shout out to our guy, George Frost, for the East Bay store that he has put together for us. If you want some gear, go ahead, check that out and get our logo on all your favorite Nike, Jordan apparel. And also want to thank our friends and our family for the support that they've given us. Definitely couldn't have done it without that. And most importantly, God for giving us the vision on how to develop Area Code 459.
Man, I'm so fired up tonight. We're talking about student to the workforce. But before we get to the student to the workforce, go ahead and introduce our guest, CB.
We are so excited to bring to you guys a new guest and somebody that's come highly recommended to us from one of our other guests. He has attended Anderson University, where he graduated with his BS in physical education. While at Anderson, he served on staff for 5 years, 4 as a student assistant and 1 as an assistant coach. He has been a staple at team camps all across the country, where he has worked at camps like Texas, Wake Forest, UL Lafayette, Tulane, Wofford, UNC Charlotte, and many more. From there, he began coaching at Hargrave's Military Institute, where he is now entering into his 5th season as an assistant coach. Let's welcome to the show, Coach David Bentley. How you doing, Coach?
Doing well. Appreciate you. Oh, man, I feel the energy.
Love it.
Man. We are so excited to have you, man. Coach, tonight we're talking about student to the workforce. I had an opportunity to introduce this episode. And, man, when I really thought about this episode, I tried to write my thoughts down. I said, man, you know what? I'm just going to speak from the heart. And it's really more about how I grew up. People used to call me an old soul. And I never knew what that was, being a young guy. Like, man, what's an old soul? And I was like, man, what does that mean? But they're like, oh, well, you just pick up all these old habits and you do these things, or you leverage these skills, or you leverage this lesson as you go, and you kind of are wise beyond your years. And I used to say, man, I guess. But as I got older, I started to realize that me growing up with my grandfather, that I actually use something what they call the thermodynamic process, or the law of thermodynamics. And it's where it says energy can be changed from one form to another, but it cannot be created or destroyed. I was just taking my energy from my grandparents, taking that energy of that old soul, taking that energy, those skills, those trials and errors, and I was learning, all right, as I was building. Tonight, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the skills and developments and the trials and errors that you must face as you grow older and you move from a student into the professional world. Coach, last episode, we talked about discernment. When it comes to things others teach you and sources you use to empower yourself, what skills have you noticed that you would like to possess, or what are some of the traits you knew were not for you?
Yeah, I think one thing that I've really learned is I had a really good friend of mine who's actually a college basketball official. My home life growing up wasn't the best, so I kind of took to a liking to him in high school. And one thing that he really helped me kind of get to know was you got to understand both sides of a story, both sides of the equation, sides of any kind of situation, because even if you're absolutely 100% right, you at least knowing the other side of the situation will give you a little bit of empathy, will give you a little bit of understanding to where someone might be coming from. And even if, let's say, they act out of turn or out of line, at least knowing where they came from may at least allow you to, in your solution to that problem, or your answer, I guess, might be a little bit, you might come at it from a different angle, because you at least understood, even though they didn't maybe in a game make the right move or react the right way, you at least knew, like, hey, maybe they had something going on at home, so I'm not going to just come at them a lot at hard. I'm going to come at them from a different angle. So I think one of the biggest skills that kind of has really stayed with me is knowing both sides of an equation.
Man, I'm still in that, coach. Man, I never heard that before. Never heard it. Man, coach, can I have it? Because both sides of the equation, taking that math problem, taking that life situation and turning it into something that you can use, man, that's powerful. Thank you, coach. I appreciate that.
It's all yours, man.
I love that you said that too, because that's something that we try and leverage is getting to know somebody, building that relationship, not being transactional, and making sure that you understand where people are coming from, because it allows you to build genuine and authentic relationships and truly care about other people. But when we talk about this transition from student to the workforce, I know like when you were in college, you were an assistant coach, a student assistant on this team, and it's kind of helped you transition into that role as an assistant coach. But what has been the most difficult part of this transition from a student to the workforce, and then why?
I would say the toughest part was getting people to see you in a different light. Is like there was coaches that I would see on the road as a student, or because I went to a Division II school. In Division II, you can recruit and go out. So I would see these coaches, and they would know, oh, that's Dave. He's a manager at Anderson, or he's a student assistant. But then switching, getting out and into the force, it's actually, when I call them up now from Hargrave, and I'm like, hey, coach, I got a kid from you. It's like I'm still fighting it to this day of getting coaches to understand, like, that's not the student manager anymore. So I think the toughest challenge has been getting people to see you in a different light, see you as more of a grown-up, I guess, and just overcoming whatever comes with that. Because when they see you, when you're younger, or, I'm sure you go back home to people that you knew when you were younger, and then it's like now you're all grown up, and it's like they still know you as that young kid or young Todd or whatever. And so the toughest thing for me was getting people to understand that, like, this is not that manager, that student assistant college kid anymore.
Man, that's crazy that you said that, man, because actually, man, I had that same situation. Like when I got out from college, instead of staying in Montgomery, Alabama, where I went to school, played college football, jumping on the staff there, I decided to come home and take my talents back to my neighborhood and build that up. And one of the toughest things that I had as a professional was getting people to see me as Coach Robert Britton instead of little Bobby Britton that used to run the football or play basketball on the court, and it was tough. And I actually just 18 months ago made a drastic decision in my life to step away from basketball. Basketball was going good for me, good fundraising, nice program, beautiful community. And I just walked away from it one day. And it was that ultimate decision, like, I need to move to that next step. And that next step for my life as a man was I needed to move out of the situation of being a child and have people see me in a different light. So I left Panama City, Florida, Panhandle, and moved to Austin, Texas, where I took another job and went into a different situation. And I leveraged my purpose partners to help me stretch and do things to be successful. Coach, when you're a child, one of our biggest fears is failure. I know this being, a basketball coach, being a big brother, and coach, this too, from the student manager to, where those guys are your age to being a little bit older. Now they're younger than you, and you see as a child that they always hate to fail. How do you leverage failure to sharpen your skills?
Yeah, it's definitely tough. It's a challenge because, again, like, we're all, especially being in athletics, we're all so competitive driven that we don't want to lose. And I love quotes. And I heard a quote that it was actually by Sam Ponder that works at ESPN. And she said, if you can be, I'm going to probably mess it up, but she said, if you can be okay with the worst case scenario and still, or if you know the worst case scenario and you can still be okay with what that is, then that frees you up to be able to go for whatever it is. And I tried to live that quote of, like, even if it's something of, if I tell this kid to do this on the court and he doesn't do it, and the worst case scenario is he turns the ball over and we lose a game, I'm still going to be all right. I'm still going to wake up. Yeah, it's going to be a tough game, but I'm still going to be okay. Even you want to take it to, reaching out for a job. If I call this coach up and he tells me, sorry, Dave, I don't have a job right now, the worst thing that's going to say is I got that no. I'm still going to be in no worse of a situation than I am now without a job or looking for a job. So I think that whole process of being able to know, because a lot of people tell you, don't picture the worst. Don't picture the worst case scenario. Just think positive. And I think there's stuff to that. But I think if you can picture the worst case scenario and think, if this happens, will I still be okay? And you can say, yes, I can. I think that frees you up more to go for whatever that is.
That's super powerful, because I always leverage preparing ahead. And there's nothing wrong with playing out different scenarios, because it helps you to prepare. It helps you to be ready. It helps you to kind of cope ahead. So you'll be able to read more in a on the mental side versus the emotional side, and it'll help you to think more clearly. But I love that you leverage failure, Coach B, because that's actually my next question. And funny thing is we don't really talk about our questions before we get on here. So it's always cool to see how they align. But, like upon graduation, when you graduate from college or you graduate from high school, the expectation for a lot of college students is just go out there and get a well-paying job. But many times, a lot of people forget that you have to work your way up, and especially when it comes to the coaching world, and pay might be low, hours might be long. People's opinions a lot of times can make you feel like that you're not doing a great job. Like I've had some people in my life that have told me that I need to go out there and get a real job. I need to stop coaching because I need to get something that's going to pay me well. And they don't understand that a lot of times experience is more valuable than going out and making $40,000 a year. But how do you filter out that noise, keep your head down, and continue to pursue your dreams?
I think being confident in who you are. I think like my faith is vital and paramount to who I am, and it'd be really hard if I didn't know who I was, and my confidence doesn't lie within a job title, within a pay bracket, within a area of living, within what other people think or say. So I think it's just having confidence in who you are, knowing that, whatever pay might come, is all going to eventually one day fade away, and no one's going to remember in 50 years how much you made. They're going to remember the impact you had on people as you were climbing up in the business. So, and then obviously, again, just to reiterate the faith part, is just trusting that God will provide and he's got a plan. Knowing that when you're kind of in those dog days, if you will, of grinding your way up, that he's working something out for you, and the lesson you learn, most of the time, the lessons you learn in those dog days are going to be the ones you hold on to when you get to that mountaintop. And I think just knowing that and being able to, say like, yeah, this might not be the best situation I'm in right now, or this might not be the best paying, or I could take the way out and go get another job, and I wouldn't be doing what I love, but I'd be getting paid a lot more. I think staying in it is when you get that payoff, that reward. I think that makes it that much sweeter because you knew what you put in to earn it and to get to that point. So all in all, I would just say I think the best way for me to kind of keep my eyes on the prize, if you will, or keep the main thing is just knowing who I am and just knowing that, I'm on the path that I'm supposed to be on at this moment.
Man, me and this guy was coach. Me and you are best friends in another life. I'm telling you, man. For God has a plan for me. Jeremiah 29:11. That's my joint there. It's crazy that you said those things, and I'm gonna touch kind of back on Caitlin's question. She was talking about blocking that white noise, and you talking about that payoff, and just kind of sticking to the plan, keeping focus on it, not letting the white noise and the outside noise hurt you. And then those lessons that you pick up along the way, you're able to leverage them later. And just being being coaches, and Caitlin, she's now in her dog days. I've done my dog days at 5-star in different camps, UCF. I've been, Sanford, all these, different camps that I used to do. And, coach, you've done them too. So when you're in those dog days, you're kind of moving up that ladder. Moving from adolescence to adulthood, the world seems to actually be 10 times the size of your imagination. Even like when you're a dog, you're like, how big is Calipari's job, right? Like how big is Mike Krzyzewski's job? And, it's kind of fun to hang around those assistants sometimes in different camps, but you really never know how big that world is until you step inside that world. How does skill building and trial and error help you build confidence in working in those spaces with people who might be more seasoned or actually more skilled than you?
I think part of it kind of goes back to what I said a little bit earlier, is just being okay with the worst result and knowing that you can be okay with that. And I think I think trial and error shows that, one, you don't know everything. I heard Will Hardy from the Spurs, the assistant coach, said, like, be okay when I don't know. And I think those are your opportunities to where you say, I don't know. That opens the door up to, let me learn something here. Or let me, trial and error, do something wrong and figure out why that went wrong. Realize the way of, okay, this is why I messed up. This is why this didn't go as planned. So now I know next time I come across this, I know to do it differently. And you wouldn't have known that had you not known that error. So I think having a lot of you have to have humility. And because if you are too prideful, then you're either not going to allow yourself to fail, or you're not going to allow yourself to learn from the failure. So I think those are the skills that being okay with the failure and having a lot of humility have helped me kind of grow. And I think too, communication is also key. I think you have to be able to communicate because I think a lot of people can hear if you know what you're talking about, or if you're wanting to learn and be genuine and really understand, as opposed to just kind of playing the game or going through the motions, if you will, to use a cliche. So I think those two things, I think, like I said, allowing yourself to be okay with failure and learn, and then communication. You've got to be able to, because you got to know your stuff. When you're going to go into you get out of the student role and go into the workplace, obviously you're going to have to take what you learned in your student role and know your stuff. So I think communication is also a big part of that.
I love that you say allow yourself to fail, because that's something that I used to leverage when before I got into college, and when I was in high school. I used to believe that I wanted to be X, Y, or Z. And so I always tried to find an opportunity or find a job that allowed me to work in that field that I believed I wanted to go into once I graduated from college, or even graduated from high school, because you always have to pick a major when you go to college too, so that helps. But it allowed me honestly to fail, one, and it allowed me to see what I didn't want to do. It allowed me to see where my passion lied. And I think that when I got to college, and then even more so after, it really helped me to be a step ahead in that process, which I think a lot of people my age struggle with that. Even graduate high school, like, know what they want to get their degree in, so then they just pick something random, and then when they graduate college, they're even more at a loss of what they do. But do you think this trial and error process is beneficial? And what are some ways you figured out what you wanted to do?
Yeah, I think definitely trial and error is beneficial, because, again, just kind of going back to what we're saying is you have to experience some things that you don't want to do, or maybe to realize, like I've heard people say, I had to go and do something that I didn't want to do to realize I really wanted to go back into coaching, or go in, that this is where I needed to be. And then the second part was what again, Kaylin?
What are some ways that you figured out what you wanted to do?
Oh, yeah. I think me figuring out what I wanted to do was I wanted to emulate the people that had an impact on me. And I think that was kind of what helped me realize what I wanted to do was I had coaches that really had a big impact on me. And, obviously, I had a high school PE teacher who was also the basketball coach. And then the college basketball official, when I was at college, he taught special needs students. And I came alongside as a peer tutor, kind of as an elective, and would take one period a day, and we'd kind of go in there with the special needs students and help them learn how to make their bed. And, we'd take them to like McDonald's and show them so they could be as independent as possible. We're talking people with, mental and intellectual challenges, Down syndrome, things like that. So I think me figuring out what I wanted to do was just emulate the people that had an impact on me, be like the people that poured into me. And that's kind of just what I wanted to do, was in turn have that same impact on others.
Mm. Man, I feel you on that, man. Two of the people and one of my best bosses, I thought he was Superman when I was in school, and he didn't coach me. Actually, he coached the year before I got to varsity. He was an O-line coach, but he was one of those guys that when I was a ninth grader needing to get to practice early in the morning for football, he would ride by my house because he lived near me and say, "Hey, I'll just pick you up, jump in the back of my truck, and I got you." And I thought he was Superman, and um, it's crazy now because I work in a space now. He's like, "Hey, I need a job. Can you help me out?" So it's almost like it's twofold. You leverage people to help you out. There was some coach or some teacher or some mentor, that pushed you along and got you to where you need to be. And that trial and error does work too. Caitlin said it. You said it. One of my favorite quotes, and Caitlin's probably heard this over and over again. And I take it from Abraham Lincoln, and he said, "You learn from most. You can learn," or he says, "You can learn from anyone, but from most, you learn what not to do." You know what I mean? So you can learn from anyone or anything. You can go out there and say, "Okay, this is what I want to do," or, "Hey, I'm making a little bit more scratch," or, "I'm doing this." But then you could be working 8 to 5 in front of a computer. You're not really happy. You're not really interacting. I mean, I know at one point that, I've talked to friends, they've been on a desk job and they're like, "Man, I got 4 hours worth of Instagram time a day." Like, are you doing your job or are you looking at Instagram? Which
Yeah,
one
yeah,
is it?
yeah.
So, and that's how I was when I got out of college. I actually was in politics. I worked for the governor of Alabama. And I remember sitting in my cubicle one day and I was like, "Man, I want to be outside. I want to go be with the people that, poured into me." So I went and I took a job with coaches that helped me. And we're all coaches, speaking of that. And we always talk about working on fundamentals. I know, Coach, just looking at you, you're a fundamental guy. I know Caitlin, she's heard this over and over and over again. I'm like, those fundamentals are very important. Because when you're tired, I always used to say, rely on your fundamental instincts that you have developed. When it comes to life, what fundamental skills did you learn as an adolescent that you feel that you revert to any time in your professional life?
I think number one is just obviously loving God but loving people. And when push comes to shove, when it kind of gets to that nitty gritty or that moment, if you will, I think you just got to love people, and you've got to realize that all of the people that come in contact with you, whether it's through a government job, whether it's through a athletic team, whether it's through a school, and the person you sit beside in class, everybody is someone else's son, daughter, brother, sister, niece, nephew, grandson, and when you take that mindset to people and even take it a step further and think this person's a child of God, I
Mm.
think that helps you realize, whatever, um, I guess, situation is going to present itself, whether interaction, like this person is a, child of God, and they're someone's daughter, son. I know them. I not like what they're wearing, what they smell like, what they ate for breakfast, but I can at least just, show love to them, love on them, things like that. So I think the biggest skill that I've learned from growing up to now, to when it kind of comes to shove, is just love people.
Man, I like that you said that. And I know Caitlin has one more question, but this actually answers another one of my questions. So I'm going to tie this in and I'll let her go after this one. One of the unique skills that we talk about here at Area Code 459 is love. When we read it, when we study it, when we talk about it, we're like, this, every time we do, we feel like it's an action. Like a lot of people look at it as more of an emotion. And we're like, no, it's an action. Like you can actually not like something, somebody, but you can choose to love them at the same time. Like you were just saying, you're like, I might not like what they say, I might not like what they wear, but that's somebody's daughter, that's somebody's son, that's somebody's grandmother, that's somebody's father, mother. And then ultimately that is the child of God. So I like that you said that. And like I said, you could choose to love someone and not like necessarily the things that they do. How do you specifically use love and passion for things in your job and in your space of coaching?
You talking like material things, or you talking just love in general?
Just love in general.
Love in general. Yeah. I think if the people that are like, I guess in my, how I use it as coaching is if the people that are the players that I'm and the assistants and staff that I'm in with, if they don't see that I have passion for what I'm doing and passion coming in every day and love for the other people, then that's going to eventually rub off on them. And one, they're not going to play very hard for when, when I coach them or say something to them. And two, that's going to probably maybe turn more kind of a sourpuss, if you will, of, man, Coach Dave comes in and, man, he's just, the sky is gray and whoa and all this. And it's like, but if you love on them and show them love into what you do, I think that's going to eventually come into them. And sometimes there's going to be kids that you don't get back that they're just so turned off by your love and your passion for what you do. But there's also some kids that you're going to get that where they might come in as sort of like a hardened, stone, if you will. And you can maybe soften that stone up a little bit by just loving on them and showing them the passion that you have for what you do. And maybe hopefully it rubs off on them. Hopefully I answered that.
Oh, yeah, you did. Thanks,
okay.
Coach.
Oh, that's great, because I always say they don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And that's something that I try and leverage every day, especially working with boys. Sometimes they really don't know. They really don't care how much you know, because these boys can, if you show them that you love them, then they're really in tune to your voice, and they're really more willing to listen to you. And when we talk about skills, I know you talked about looking at both sides of the equation, about communication, about loving people. What are some things that you see your players tend to lack when it comes to skill? And how do you help them to develop these skills so it makes that transition easier as they move from your program?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest ones I kind of hit on earlier that the players, like younger people, is communication. Is they always want to look at a monitor, a screen, and they'd rather text you than just get on the phone and hear your voice. And I think it is hard to get on, make a phone call. But if you can get a face-to-face interaction with them, I think that's going to start to break down that wall to when then you can make a call and hear them on the phone. And so I think communication would be one. And then I think being vulnerable. I think often our society puts this picture of you got to be this invincible, some kind of human that can't make mistakes, that can't fail, that can't show emotion, that can't, be sad. And like, I think being vulnerable is a step to actually showing strength. So I think those would probably be two areas that I would say the most that I've seen that kids like is communication. And I think that's probably widespread across the board. And then I think being vulnerable. I think too often we try to show kids that like you got to be this sort of strong image of man or woman to not show any weakness. But I think actually showing weakness in turn allows you to be a stronger person.
Coach, man, that's tough, man. That's tough. Thank you so much. Man, we're getting ready to wrap up here in that area code 459. We come to a huddle. So, we've been coaches. We always huddle up. And what we do is we call it our call to action. We just want to call to people things from the episodes or things that are on our heart to, ensure that they push into their lives. So I'm going to let CB start. Coach, you can go, and then I'll finish up. Go ahead, CB.
I just want to say, for all those that don't know what they want to do when it comes to this student to the workforce transition, look at those that have impacted you. See how you can emulate those impactful characteristics in your life, and then apply them to the things that you love to do, and see how that will change your life and those around you, and then help lead you on the path that God has for you.
Awesome. That was good, CB. I would probably say kind of what I hit on earlier is just be okay with failure. Kind of envision that worst case scenario. And then if you can be okay with that, then go for whatever it is. And I think that frees you up. So I think my kind of call to action would be just be okay with knowing that there's going to be ups and downs on the way. You're going to slip up. But as long as you're kind of stumbling forward, then I think you're definitely on your way to wherever you're going.
Man, our listeners know what I'm about to say, and I hate that I had to go last because I should have went first. There's some heat that if you guys turn it off right now, y'all are good. But man, that was some heat coming from both of you guys, especially Coach Bentley. You talking about failure leads to success and using that, and then Caitlin talking about leveraging people that are most impactful to you. I'm gonna stay on that vibe that Coach was talking about earlier about soaking things up from other people, and I want you to kind of look at that. The thermodynamic theory of energy, talking about energy that can be changed from one form to another, but it cannot be created or destroyed. And put yourself around people with good energy. Coach Bentley talked about how he believes in vulnerability and communication. Man, as a man in America, what a great lesson to have. Growing up, knowing how to be vulnerable, knowing how to build strength by tearing down that fake wall of weaknesses, and then also being a really, really good communicator. That would have got me out of a lot of situations. So definitely be around people that you can soak up energy from and learn things like vulnerability and great communication skills. Coach, once again, it's been a blessing having you on Area Code 459. When we leave, we always leave with our mottos. So we're going to let you shout out or say something that you leave your players with before every practice. CB will go, and then I'll finish up. Go ahead, Coach. Go ahead, Coach. What do you like to say?
Oh, me first? Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah. I always just tell our guys, I make sure when I leave them, I always tell them I love them, just so they know that, because I don't know if they might not hear that from where the home life, whatever. And then I always just I have a quote that I sort of live by is be who you is, because if you ain't who you is who you ain't. And so I kind of shorten it and condense it to one thing I kind of leave them with is be who you is, do what you do. And I think if you do that, then you'll be all right.
I like that. Good job, Coach.
We're going to be stealing a lot of your stuff.
And learn the thing, we're all thieves in some way. So
Hey, I've been saying that too. But as you guys know, don't discount your value, and let's get 1% better every day.
Man, and Coach, man, it's been a blessing once again. I know that we're friends because I always tell CB, we get off the phone, I'm like, man, I love you, just to let them know, man, I love them and I'm here for them. But remember, Coach B loves you. Let love be the frequency. And remember, build relationships over transactions. Coach B's out. Peace.